What if I proved to you mathematically that a person who saves money for just 7 years and then quits forever will end up richer than a person who saves for 30 years? It sounds impossible, but it is a fundamental law of compound interest that 90% of the population ignores. You have been sold a 40-year lie. You do not need to grind until you are 65. Today, I am going to show you the coast number. It is the specific mathematical threshold where you can stop saving for retirement completely, spend 100% of your paycheck, and still retire a millionaire. I'm King, and I am a wealth strategist helping you escape the rat race years ahead of schedule. Subscribe and like to stop grinding and start living. Let's be honest about the advice you have been given your entire life. It usually sounds something like this. Save 10 to 15% of your income every single month from the day you get your first job until the day you turn 65. Put it in a 401k, buy a mutual fund, and pray. That is the standard operating procedure, and I am here to tell you that it is absolute garbage. It is a trap designed to keep you on a hamster wheel of mediocrity for 4 decades. The problem with that advice is that it assumes your life is linear. It assumes your energy levels, your expenses, and your tolerance for suffering are exactly the same at 25 as they will be at 50. But that is not how human beings work. We are not robots. We burn out. The reason so many of you are lying awake at night is that the finish line feels so incredibly far away. When you are 26 years old, 65 sounds like a myth. It sounds like a different dimension. So you grind and you scrape and you deny yourself joy today for a payoff that might happen in 40 years. It is exhausting and it is inefficient. The traditional model relies on chronic discomfort, a low-level pain that lasts forever. I want to introduce you to a different philosophy. I call it front-loading your suffering. Think about an airplane. When a plane takes off, it uses a massive amount of fuel to get off the ground. The engines are screaming, the vibration is intense, and the energy expenditure is off the charts. It is fighting gravity with everything it has, but once it hits cruising altitude, 30,000 feet up, the pilot eases off the throttle. The plane doesn't stop moving. It is actually moving faster than before, but the effort required to stay there drops to almost nothing. It just glides. Most people are trying to taxi their plane down the runway for 40 years, never applying enough thrust to actually take off. They are constantly pushing but never flying. The strategy I am going to show you is about going full throttle for a short, intense burst, reaching cruising altitude, and then taking your foot off the gas forever. That cruising altitude has a name. In the financial world, we call it coast fire. But to reach it, you need to understand the math that the banks do not want you to see. You need to understand the difference between being the engine and being the passenger. When you start investing, you are the engine. Your money is small, it is weak, it cannot push itself. You have to get up every day, go to work, earn a paycheck, and physically push that money into your account. You are doing all the heavy lifting. If you stop pushing, the growth stops. This is the pushing the boulder phase, and it sucks. It is slow, it is heavy, and it feels like you are getting nowhere. But there is a tipping point, a crossover point. This is the moment where the momentum of the boulder becomes stronger than your muscles, the moment where the compound interest earned by your portfolio in a single year is greater than the amount of money you could possibly contribute from your salary. Let's look at 2 different people to prove this. We will call them the sprinter and the marathoner. This comparison is going to shatter everything you think you know about hard work. Let's look at the sprinter first. Let's say she is 25 years old. She decides she is going to live below her means and go absolutely hardcore. She invests $20,000 a year. That is a lot of money. I know. It requires sacrifice. She drives a used car. She has roommates. She doesn't eat out every night. She does this for just 7 years. From age 25 to age 32. That is a total investment of $140,000. And then at age 32, she stops. Completely. Life happens. Maybe she has kids, maybe she wants to travel, or maybe she just wants to buy a nicer house. She never puts another penny into her retirement account. She just lets that money sit there, growing at a standard 7% adjusted for inflation until she is 65. Now let's look at the marathoner. He wants to enjoy his 20s. He spends what he earns. He starts investing at age 35. He is a little late to the party, so he decides to be consistent. He invests that same $20,000 a year, every single year, from age 35 all the way to age 65. That is 30 years of discipline, 30 years of saying no to spending that money. He contributes a total of $600,000 of his own hard-earned cash. So who wins? The girl who saved for 7 years and quit, or the guy who grinded for 30 years? When they both turn 65, the sprinter who stopped saving decades ago has approximately $1.3 million. The marathoner, he has roughly $1.2 million. The sprinter wins. She has more money despite contributing $460,000 less than the marathoner. She worked hard for 7 years. He worked hard for 30. And she beat him. That is the power of front-loading. That is the power of reaching escape velocity early. The sprinter reached her coast number at age 32. The moment she hit that number, her retirement was funded. She didn't need to add more fuel. The rocket was already in space. The marathoner spent his whole life fighting gravity because he started too late to let the physics take over. This brings us to the magic number, the milestone that changes everything. Charlie Munger, the late billionaire and partner of Warren Buffett, famously said, "The first $100,000 is a asterisk teach, but you gotta do it." He wasn't trying to be vulgar, he was being mathematical. Getting to that first $100,000 is the hardest financial challenge you will ever face. It feels like climbing a vertical wall. You are scraping together savings, 500 here, 1,000 there, and the investment returns are pathetic. You make a 7% return on $10,000 and you get $700. It's uninspiring. It doesn't feel like wealth, it feels like pocket change. But something happens when you cross $100,000. The math starts to get weird. 7% of 100 grand is $7,000. That is a nice vacation. That is a used car. Suddenly, your money is working as hard as a part-time employee. If you can grind your way to $100,000 by age 30, you have effectively secured a middle-class retirement without ever saving another dime. Let's run that math. $100,000 at age 30, compounding at 7% until age 65, turns into nearly $1.1 million. That is with zero additional contributions. That means if you hit 100 large by your 30th birthday, you can theoretically spend every single dollar you earn from age 31 to 65 and still retire a millionaire. This is the concept of coasting. You are coasting downhill. The engine is off, but the car is still accelerating. This is why the rich get richer. They are not working harder than you. They just have a bigger snowball rolling down the hill. Your job, your only job, is to get your snowball to the top of the hill as fast as humanly possible so you can let gravity take over. So how do you find your specific number? Because everyone is different. Maybe you don't need $1 million. Maybe you need $2 million. Or maybe you are fine with 700,000. The formula for your coast number is actually quite simple. You take your retirement target, let's say $1.5 million, and you divide it by 1 plus your expected return rate raised to the power of how many years you have left. If that sounds like high school algebra trauma, let me simplify it for you. If you are 25 years old and you want to retire with $1 million at 65, your coast number is roughly $67,000 today. If you have 67 grand invested right now, you are done. If you are 30 years old, that number jumps to about 95,000. If you are 35, you need about 135,000. You see the pattern? The longer you wait, the steeper the hill gets. The amount of money you need to coast grows exponentially every year you delay. This is why your 20s and early 30s are not the time to find yourself by spending everything you make. They are the time to build the engine. But here's where the psychological twist happens. And this is the part that nobody talks about. Reaching your coast number doesn't just change your bank account, it changes your soul. It changes the way you wake up in the morning. Think about the anxiety you feel right now, that tightness in your chest. It comes from the feeling of obligation. You have to work this job because you have to save for the future. You are a slave to your future self. You are working today to feed the version of you that will exist in 40 years. When you hit your coast number, that obligation evaporates. You are no longer working for survival. You are working for luxury. You are no longer working to ensure you don't eat cat food at age 80. You are working to buy a nicer car today or to take a better trip next week. The mental shift is profound. It allows you to downshift. This is where we get into a strategy called barista fire. Let's say you hit your coast number at age 32. You have $200,000 invested. You are done saving for retirement. But you hate your high-stress corporate job. You hate the 60-hour weeks. You hate the boss who emails you at midnight. Because you no longer need to save 20% of your income, your expenses just dropped. You don't need a salary of $100,000 anymore. Maybe you only need $40,000 to cover your rent and food. Suddenly, you can quit that corporate job and go work as a barista, or a park ranger, or a freelance writer. You can take a job that pays half as much but gives you twice as much happiness. Because your retirement is already cooking in the background, you only need to earn enough to cover your current lifestyle. You have bought back your time, you have bought back your stress levels. This is the ultimate hack. It is not about stopping work completely at 30. That is unrealistic for most people. And honestly, it gets boring. It is about stopping the suffering at 30. It is about detaching your labor from your survival. When you know that your future is secure, you become dangerous in the best possible way. You can take risks, you can start that business because if it fails, you are not destitute. Your retirement is still safe. You can ask for a raise with confidence because if they fire you, you don't panic. You have leverage. The coast number gives you the ultimate leverage over your employer and over the economy. Now, I know what you are thinking. I can hear the objections rattling around in your brain right now. But King, what about inflation? What if the market crashes? What if the world ends? Listen to me. These are fear-based questions, and fear keeps you poor. Of course, inflation exists. That 7% return I used in the calculations, that is usually an inflation-adjusted number. The stock market historically returns about 10%. I use 7% to be conservative, accounting for 3% inflation. The math holds up. And what if the market crashes? Good, let it crash. You are 30 years old in this scenario. You aren't touching that money for another 3 decades. A market crash when you are young is actually a gift, if you are still adding a little bit. But even if you aren't, the market has recovered from every single crash in history. Every war, every pandemic, every recession, it always comes back. Betting against human innovation and the growth of the economy has historically been a terrible bet. But let's look at this another way. The coast number is a floor, not a ceiling. When I tell you to stop saving at 32, I am giving you permission, not a command. If you hit your number and you decide you actually like your high-paying job, great. Keep working, keep saving. Now you aren't just coasting to $1 million, you are coasting to $5 million. You are coasting to a private jet, but the difference is that you are doing it because you want to, not because you have to. The desperation is gone, the panic is gone. This strategy is about removing the shackles of forever. The human brain cannot handle forever. If I tell you to do 500 push-ups right now, you will quit before you start. But if I tell you to do as many push-ups as you can for 2 minutes, and then you can rest for the rest of the day, you will go hard. You will give it everything you have. That is what front-loading is. It is a sprint. It is telling yourself, I am going to live like a monk for 5 years. I am going to drive a beater. I am going to cook at home. I am going to hustle. And in exchange for those 5 years of discipline, you get 50 years of freedom. Most people do the opposite. They live like kings in their 20s. They lease the BMW. They go to Coachella on a credit card. They eat out 5 times a week. They are backloading their suffering. They are choosing to have an easy time now, which guarantees a brutal time later. They are the ones who will be greeting you at Walmart when they are 75 because Social Security isn't enough to pay the heating bill. That is a tragedy, and it is a preventable tragedy. You have to realize that money has velocity. At the beginning, it is static. It sits there, but once it starts moving, it creates its own wind. At $10,000, you are pushing. At $100,000, it is rolling. At $500,000, it is flying. At $1 million, it creates its own gravity field. It attracts more money. Opportunities come to people who have capital. The first million is hard. The second million is inevitable. Your struggle is only temporary, but only if you attack it with intensity right now. I want you to imagine your life 10 years from now. Scenario A. You didn't listen. You spent everything. You are still waking up at 6 a.m. to an alarm clock that makes you want to punch a wall. You are still worried about layoffs. You are still checking your bank account with one eye closed. Scenario B. You grinded. You hit your coast number. You wake up when your body is rested. You make coffee. You go to a job you actually enjoy, or maybe you work on your own project. You check your portfolio and see that it went up by $10,000 while you were sleeping. You feel light. You feel free. That version of you is waiting. But you have to buy that version of you with the choices you make today. It comes down to this. Do you want to be the engine forever? Do you want to carry the weight of your financial existence on your shoulders until your back breaks? Or do you want to build a machine that carries the weight for you? The math is undeniable. The path is clear. It is not easy, but it is simple. Get to $100,000. Do whatever it takes. Sell things, work overtime, cut expenses to the bone. Get to that number. Once you cross that line, the game changes. You stop playing on hard mode and start playing on God mode. So here is my challenge to you. Don't just watch this video and nod your head. Don't just treat this as entertainment. This is your life. Open a spreadsheet right now. Google a compound interest calculator. Put in your current age, your current savings, and a 7% return. Look at the number at age 65. Is it enough? If it is, congratulations, you are coast fire. Go buy a bottle of champagne. If it's not, play with the monthly contribution number. Meaningful. Find out exactly how much you need to save per month for exactly how many years to hit that point where you can stop. Make it real. Turn the vague anxiety into a concrete plan. And then execute. Stop buying things you don't need to impress people you don't like. Stop trading your freedom for temporary dopamine hits. The price of the new iPhone isn't $1,000. The price is the delayed retirement that comes with it. Every dollar you spend today is a soldier you are firing from your army. Every dollar you invest is a soldier that will fight for you day and night forever. You are not a beast of burden. You were not born to pay bills and die. You were born to live. But in this system, you have to buy your freedom first. The price is high, but it is on sale if you pay it early. Front load the pain. Embrace the suck for a few years. Push the boulder until it rolls on its own. And then step back, take a deep breath, and watch the physics of wealth take over. I'm King. This is the math of liberation. If this video lit a fire under you, if you realize that you have been playing the game wrong, do me a favor. Smash that subscribe button, share this with a friend who is drowning in the rat race. Let's get rich, let's get free, and let's do it sooner than anyone thinks is possible. Class dismissed.